The atmosphere inside the studio was calm and professional as the cameras began to roll, but beneath that polished calm, there was already a faint hum of tension. Lorraine Kelly, as always, was radiant, seated at her usual spot with her notes neatly stacked, ready to interview one of Britain's most admired actors. Colin Firth had agreed to appear live to promote his new film, a rare event since he generally avoided talk shows. The crew expected a refined, quiet conversation, full of laughter and anecdotes about cinema. No one could have predicted that by the end of the segment, the headlines would read of confrontation and a storm no one saw coming. When Colin entered, the audience clapped warmly. He smiled in acknowledgement, though his expression was guarded. Lorraine welcomed him with her trademark friendliness, thanking him for joining despite his busy schedule. "Always lovely to see you, Colin," she said. He nodded politely and replied, "Thank you for having me, Lorraine." The first few minutes went smoothly. They discussed his early career, his transformation into a global icon, and his humble reflections on fame. Everything was light and charming, the way morning television should be. Then, Lorraine, following a note from her producer, brought up a question about his divorce and his rumored struggles with the pressures of fame. The silence that followed her question was brief but electric. Colin's smile froze, his eyes lowering slightly before he replied, "I didn't realize we were going there." Lorraine's tone softened, "It's something people are curious about, but only if you're comfortable sharing." He adjusted his tie and gave a tight smile. "I think the work speaks for itself," he said, his voice edged with irritation. The audience laughed nervously, unsure if it was a joke. Lorraine tried to pivot quickly, but Colin added, "I agreed to talk about my film, not to dissect my private life." The warmth in his voice had vanished, replaced by a slow, simmering anger. Lorraine, always poised, attempted to calm the moment. "Of course, I understand," she said, "but it's part of your story, isn't it? How life and art sometimes overlap." Colin's expression darkened. "I'm not a story," he said sharply. "I'm a person who acts in them." The line landed hard, cutting through the studio air like a blade. Lorraine blinked, surprised, then smiled gently to keep the energy light. "You've always been so honest about your craft," she said. "I think people just find comfort in how human you are." Colin sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Honesty doesn't mean exposure, Lorraine," he replied. The exchange unsettled the audience, who watched in uncomfortable silence. Lorraine tried to move back to safer ground, asking about his creative process, but the tone had already shifted. Colin's answers grew clipped, his body language tense. Then Lorraine mentioned his decision to temporarily step back from acting the year before, hinting that it might have been linked to emotional burnout. "Would you say that time away was a way to heal?" she asked kindly. Colin laughed quietly, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Heal," he repeated. "I didn't need to heal. I needed space, from people assuming they knew what I felt." That statement drew murmurs from the audience. Lorraine's professionalism never wavered, though her eyes revealed a flicker of discomfort. "I can only imagine how difficult constant public attention can be," she said, "but you've inspired so many by being open about your challenges." Colin's tone turned sharp again. "I haven't been open," he interrupted. "I've been careful. There's a difference. You in the media don't see boundaries, and then you call it honesty when we defend ourselves." Lorraine looked briefly to her producers for guidance, but the conversation was now running beyond control. Trying to diffuse the tension, she smiled and said, "I think what people love most about you is how real you are." Colin gave a short, bitter laugh. "Real?" he said. "Do you know how exhausting it is being expected to be real for entertainment?" The audience shifted uneasily. Lorraine opened her mouth to respond, but he continued, "You want authenticity, but you script every moment of it. It's not real, it's consumption." For the first time, Lorraine seemed genuinely lost for words. She set down her cue cards, her calm beginning to falter. "Colin," she said softly, "that's not fair." He leaned forward, voice lower but firm. "Fair," he said. Fair is being asked about my work, not my wounds. The producers signaled to Lorraine to move on, but Colin wasn't finished. I've sat on couches like this for years pretending to be fine, smiling while people dig for pain they have no right to touch. His tone wasn't loud, but it was full of restrained fury. The live audience was transfixed, silent except for the faint buzz of studio lights. Lorraine clasped her hands together and said quietly, "I truly didn't mean to upset you." Colin looked at her for a long second and said, "I know you didn't." That's the problem, it's become normal. The crew could feel the unraveling happening in real time. Lorraine tried to pivot completely, thanking him for his new film, but Colin interrupted again. "This isn't about my film anymore, is it?" he said bitterly. "This is about a man you want to humanize for ratings." Lorraine's patience was beginning to thin. "Colin, please," she said, her voice still even but firmer now. "This is a show people love because it's about kindness and connection." He shook his head. "Connection without consent isn't kindness," he said. "It's performance disguised as empathy." The words landed heavily, and the control room went quiet, unsure whether to cut or continue. At that point, Lorraine's producer's voice came through her earpiece urging her to move to a commercial, but she held her ground. "Colin," she said gently, "I think emotions are running high. Maybe we can take a short break." But Colin stood up abruptly, removing his microphone with steady, deliberate movements. "No, I think I'll take my own break," he said coldly. Lorraine looked up at him, stunned but still calm. "Please don't leave like this," she said, but he didn't respond. The audience gasped as he turned away from the camera, muttering, "I should have known better." The crew froze, the floor manager unsure whether to intervene. Lorraine, shaken but professional, addressed the audience, saying softly, "We'll be right back." The camera panned quickly to the show's logo as Colin walked off the set. The moment went viral almost instantly, clips flooding social media before the live broadcast even ended. Hashtags like, "Colin Firth walks off" and "Lorraine show chaos" began trending worldwide within minutes. Viewers were divided, some criticized Lorraine for pushing too far, others defended her for maintaining composure under pressure. Behind the scenes, the mood was heavy. Lorraine sat quietly during the break, exhaling deeply while producers surrounded her. "I didn't mean to provoke him," she said quietly, and no one disagreed. Colin's car left the network parking lot minutes later, leaving behind an echo of tension that lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. The show resumed later with Lorraine apologizing gently to viewers, saying, "Live television can surprise you, and emotions can be unpredictable. We wish Colin all the best." Her voice trembled only slightly, but it was enough for viewers to sense her hurt. By the afternoon, news outlets had already picked up the story. Headlines varied, some sympathetic, others sensational. Firth storms off Lorraine's set dominated social feeds. Critics analyzed every frame, body language experts weighed in on what it revealed, and fans debated whether the host had crossed a line or simply asked what any interviewer would. Lorraine's reputation for warmth largely shielded her from backlash, but Colin's silence in the following days only deepened the mystery. 3 days later, a short statement appeared on Colin's official page. "Interviews should illuminate art, not expose wounds," it read. "I reacted emotionally, and I regret the scene, but I stand by my belief that privacy matters." The message was brief but thoughtful, and it helped temper the firestorm. Lorraine responded live the next morning, saying, "I have great respect for Colin. Sometimes people are just raw, and that's okay. We all have our limits." The exchange, though indirect, felt like closure, two professionals acknowledging a human moment in a space that often forgets humanity. Still, the incident lingered in public memory. Commentators said it revealed something deeper about the modern relationship between fame and vulnerability. In a world where celebrities are expected to share every emotion, Colin's refusal had struck a chord. It reminded people that privacy isn't arrogance, it's self-preservation. Lorraine's grace under pressure, too, became a lesson in empathy under fire. She was praised for not retaliating, for choosing compassion even in discomfort. Weeks later,